Hello, people of the internet. My name is Eddie134, and today I bring you guys a very special video. So what we're going to be doing today is a reshelling of the Galactic Defender Buzz Lightyear. So as some of you may or may not know, I've been slowly releasing videos on the phrases for the figures from the Toy Story and Beyond toy line from Latin America, which in Spanish would be Toy Story Más Allá. This has just been a little project of mine that I've been doing for the past few months. I learned about these figures from people in Toy Story groups online, and there's not a lot of information about these figures to begin with, so it's been kind of nice to help fill out those informational gaps that exist on the internet and just kind of document like the information available for these figures, because if you didn't know, they actually say movie lines as opposed to what the actual toy would say. So for example, here, I can show you. The American toy says,
"I am Buzz Lightyear, and Adventure is my middle name."
But this guy, when you click him, says, where he's basically saying, "How dare you open a spaceman's helmet on an uncharted planet?" Which is a line that Buzz says during the first movie after Woody opens his helmet. So that's a line from the movie, and all the figures say lines from the movie. Now, as you can clearly see, the Latin American version is really rough around the edges. He's very yellowed, very dirty, missing paint. Actually, the buttons are a little stiff because I think the actual paint on the buttons started to melt into it, and they kind of solidified into this gunk. So it's getting stuck into the slot. And when I bought this guy, my original plan was to just restore him from scratch, like his actual base figure, instead of doing a part swap, because I just didn't want to really spend the money on a new figure. But then I really analyzed what I was going to have to do to fix him, because he's like really bad, in really bad conditions. He's like so bad, I was actually in the process of cleaning this guy, and I accidentally dropped the attack pack, and it fell on the floor and it exploded. I tried to fix it as best I could, but, you know, it's not going to be like when it was not broken, so there you have that. So instead of trying to restore it and get a result that I wasn't going to be happy with, what I instead am going to do is grab the electrical components from the Latin American release and put them in the shelf from the American one. And then we take the American parts and put them in the yellowed shell, which I'm not going to get rid of. I actually have plans for the yellowed shell once I do the swap, but that'll be a later video for another time. So let's get started. So what we're going to do first is remove all the screws from the body, focusing first to remove the legs as there's no electronic components in there, and set those aside so we can work a little bit more comfortably with the electronics later on. As you can see, I was having a little bit of an issue trying to get the shell off, and I thought maybe I was missing a screw somewhere, but apparently not. I thought maybe they were still tight, and I kept going at it. I ended up getting another screwdriver to see if I could pry it open, thinking it was stuck, and it turned out that I forgot to remove the helmet from the back. Just straight up blew up in my face. Thankfully it didn't break, so we're good. Remove all the extra bits that we're not gonna use at the moment, and now we have all the electronics freed. Now we're going to go ahead and dismantle the laser arm. My original idea was to maybe swap the ball joints as well with the new one, so as you can see I was dismantling the main shoulder joint to swap it with the new one, but later on in the video you'll see I didn't do the same thing for the one in the elbow, so I mean, it doesn't really matter, both joints still work perfectly, so it won't make a difference in the end. Then we move on to the actual laser bit. Now this part here is tricky because the laser light is actually stuck on there with a bit of a melted plastic. So you're going to have to go in there with a little bit of force and maybe some pliers to help you kind of break off that plastic bit. But once we're doing the swap, it won't make a difference that it's broken, since it's going to be tight enough to hold on. There we go. Now that the arm is completely dismantled, we're going to grab our soldering iron and go at the battery contacts really quick to remove the back plate completely, so disconnect the wires. And just go ahead and finish removing the electronic components, so unscrew the buttons and unscrew the speaker. Set that aside. Now we're going to do the same with the clean Buzz Lightyear. Remove the legs. Unscrew everything. Now we're going to unscrew the torso. And we're obviously not going to forget to move the helmet out of the way so it doesn't pop like it did on the last one. Get rid of the extra bits and set them to the side. And what we're going to do now is, as we're dismantling the new arm, we're going to be putting the shell onto the electronic components of the Latin American Buzz Lightyear, just so that it's already built once we're putting everything back inside. Now we're going to take our soldering iron and remove the wires from the battery pack. And here I am just taking the ball joint and putting it back onto the new one. The elbow joint were for the original one and the American one were both in similar conditions, so it didn't really matter. Now we're going to try to remove the plastic from the laser light, slowly but surely, breaking off that little piece of plastic that's melted on there. And just fit it back onto the Latin American electronics with a little bit of pressure and closing everything back up. Set that to the side, and we're going to finish disconnecting the electronic components. So removing the buttons and the speaker, and putting the electronics into the new shell and screwing everything back on. So now I'm just going to clean up the wires a little bit so that it's easier to connect them back onto the battery pack. I was having a bit of an issue peeling off the wire, but we got there in the end. We're going to take our back plate and the soldering iron, and we're going to use this tool to suck up the old solder from the metal connections for the battery pack just to kind of clean it up, and we're going to put some new solder on there. So this just kind of like, you melt the solder and you press the button and it sucks it up. Then we're going to add the new soldering iron to the connections again. You don't really have to do this, but I like to do this just to kind of keep everything a little bit more fresh. Now here we're just going to connect the wires again, back where they were. And add a little bit of soldering onto the wires directly to make it easier to connect. And by this point, I've come to realize that the buttons on the chest aren't actually pressing, so they'll press in, but they won't come back out. So I was thinking maybe I put the thing back in upside down or something, or maybe it was incorrectly placed. The little plastic bit that makes the connection was off maybe. So here I am kind of fiddling with it, putting it upside down maybe, thinking it was incorrectly placed. But it just turned out it wasn't the case. I'm not sure if I'm missing a piece that's supposed to make it so that the buttons actually reach without going all the way in. But what I ended up doing, and this is not on video for some reason, I guess the camera shut off while I was working on it. I ended up grabbing a little piece of paper, folded it really tight a few times, and I placed it inside of one of the buttons so that it kind of gave it a little bit more of a surface area to reach the button. And that worked perfectly. So here you can see the button working as it should with the paper. Adjusting the screws a little bit. And perfect. Now we're putting everything back in so we can close this back up. The head, the helmet, the back plate. Get all the screws back in there, nice and tight. Get the legs back on. And part 1 complete.
Soy Más Allá, siempre estoy seguro. Aquí tengo un láser y puedo usarlo.
Now we start part 2, which is going to be getting this figure to look as clean as possible. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at the shell on the outer side, you can see there's a lot of little paint markings all over the white areas. So you got some over here, right here, even on the back side as well. And we're just going to be getting rid of those, you know. How are we going to do that exactly? Well, what I have here is some baking soda. You mix this with a little bit of water, and it just acts like as an abrasive agent. You can dip this Q-tip into the mixture and just rub these little markings off. And that's essentially because these are just kind of on the surface. They're not actually stuck there. Like, this is not permanent. This will easily come off. Now, I'm only going to be doing it on the non-painted plastic areas of the figure, so I'm not going to go into the blue or the green or the wine red coloring. I'm just going to stick to the white parts, get as much of the markings as I can, and and hopefully it'll look even better once we're done. So let's get to it. And there we go. Pretty spotless, if you ask me. We got rid of most of the stains. I mean, there are some pretty prominent ones up here, and it's gone completely white. There was a few stubborn ones back here, so like you can see the green one didn't want to come off. I didn't want to force it too much. But yeah, overall I think it's looking pretty good. I think we're done here. And here we have the finished piece. The Galactic Defender with the Latin American components inside of it. I'm really happy with the end results. I mean, it's night and day compared to what it originally looked like. I know we didn't really restore it per se from the original piece to this, but I'm really happy with what we got in the end. It's super clean, buttons are working. We did have a little bit of a hiccup with the actual button pressing not being too responsive, but you know, we got there in the end. The only thing I would want to fix in the future is maybe the visor, and because it's still got a bunch of scratches and it's a little foggy as well. You can't really use the baking soda and water technique on the visor because it's transparent, and you can really see the little scratch marks from the baking soda on the visor. I learned that the hard way. So I'm gonna have to research some different techniques on how to actually clean transparent plastic and how to remove those stains from the helmet. And aside from that, probably the stickers are the other main issue. It's missing one, half of the other one is ripped off for the danger on the laser, and the Star Command logo sticker is a little bit dirty, but for the shelf, it meets my standards. I'm over the moon with what we ended up getting. And let's take a look really quick to the buttons.
¿Cómo te atreves a abrir el casco de un espacial en un planeta no explorado? Ni lo sueñes, Thor. Al infinito y más allá.
Awesome. I just wanted to quickly bring it up closer to the camera so you can see what the actual baking soda with water did to the figure. We got rid of all the spots. I mean, it's super clean. I think we missed a little bit of the blue on one of the boots, but it's not really a place where you'd be able to see it to begin with. So here's the attack pack. I'm pretty happy with what we got. And that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this shell swap / restoration of the Galactic Defender Buzz Lightyear from the Hasbro Latin America toy line, or as it is otherwise known as Toy Story y Más Allá. I have a few other videos in the pipeline that I'm thinking about releasing. There's still one more video before the end of the year, but other than that, I think we're going to be done with videos for 2024. So, yeah, thanks for watching.